I'm Daniel, the past life regressionist, and it's time to begin.
Lift off and the clock has started.
This is Timeless Spirituality. Enjoy each of your time.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Timeless Spirituality. The original plan for this episode was to have it released with the Season 5 batch, which would be sometime in later 2024. But I felt it would be best to move it up to now because of the events going on in the Middle East. Now, it was recorded back in September of 2023 before everything started to break out over there. So it's not about what's going on over there. But I just thought it would provide an interesting perspective and take on our world in general, I guess you could say, and maybe that we can look at things through a different lens. In that lens being that I don't personally believe that we will always incarnate as the same race or religion. So I hope you guys enjoy one of my favorite episodes recorded up until this point. I think it's an amazing, I just really enjoyed it. And my guest, Fally Klein, is just phenomenal beyond belief. And I look forward to giving you guys many more episodes like this one. So enjoy it. And with all of that said, if you would like to book a regression with me to discover who, when, and where you have been throughout time, you can reach me on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist or my website, thepastliferegressionist.com. And now, it's time to begin. Fally, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
I am so excited to be here. I know we spoke a little over a year ago about scheduling this, and then it didn't work out last year. And it's like mind blowing to me that this is happening. Like, how did a year pass?
The sun stays in one position.
Thank you. Thank you. Astrology nerd. Thank you.
Oh, you meant that was a rhetorical question.
Yeah, I think like one of those really confusing adulting questions. Like, you know, when you're a kid and you're like, I'm 7 in one day, but I'm almost 8.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you tell everybody you're almost 8 because your birthday was yesterday. And then you're an adult and you're like, 2 years have passed since I last spoke to you. How did this happen?
I miss being 5 3/4.
I kind of blocked that time period out of my life. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think the whole 3/4 and that stuff, yeah, it probably stopped like around 6, 7, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. Maybe Saturn had something to do with that. I don't know.
What does Saturn represent again?
I mean, time, karma, authority, but because it's a quarter of a Saturn cycle.
Okay.
Saturn, the quarters basically last 7-ish years.
Oh, fair enough. Well, developmentally, our brains also change around age 7.
Yeah.
The way we retain memory and engage with the world in terms of our consciousness. So that makes sense.
And that's like when we forget our past lives.
Yes, that's right. We do forget our past lives around age 7. Yeah, we become more aware of the outside world and less of our inner realms.
Mm-hmm. So it's before the world beats us down.
Well, I don't know what kind of childhood you had. if you were lucky enough to make it to 7 without getting beaten down, that's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't mean it that way. You know what I mean. Yeah. Okay, anyways, let's jump into the first question.
Sounds amazing.
So I don't know if your answers changed since last time. And
I don't even remember what I said last time.
Okay, perfect. So that may work to my benefit then. Or, well, because now I'm playing a game, a Guess the Year game for your favorite song about time. Okay. So I'll ask you the question and my hands are going to go up so you can see I'm not typing anything in. So Fally, what is your favorite song about time and why?
Okay, you're not allowed to ask a Gemini what her favorite is because we don't have favorites. We're very broad. But the song that comes to mind is a song called Sapphire. Do you want me to tell you who the artist is?
Yes, please.
Maria Starr.
Yeah, I'm not getting that one. Put my hands down. So why is that your favorite song about, or one of your favorite songs about time?
So Sapphire by Maria Stark was released in 2020. And it's one of those songs that came up very like serendipitously in one of the algorithms at a very specific time in the last year. I was teaching a hypnosis training, actually, hypnotherapy training, and I had just brought a cohort through quite a few modules of training. So it was a couple of months' work. And then at the very end of the last module, where we were doing past life regression and all of that womb regression, this song ends up on my feed. And it was so ethereal. And there's this one line of like a time capsule of 1,000 lives ago. And I loved it. There was also a music video that there was this moment in the music video where a man and a woman kind of like reach out their fingers and their fingers touched. It was so intimate. And it was a moment that I had actually described in one of my past life regressions. And then to see that come up on screen, someone had just acted that out and didn't know. Like I had just said that in a session and 24 hours later, I'd see that on YouTube. And then the words, a time capsule of 1,000 lives ago, felt so much the way I was experiencing my life that every so often you hit a memory, a moment, you meet a person, and it feels like something opened that you always knew, but didn't know a moment ago. It's like you unlocked something that has been living inside of you for 1,000 lifetimes, like in this time capsule. And I have this thing that when something hits me like that, I listen to that song on repeat. Like there was no space in my brain center or my heart center to listen to anything else but that song for quite a few months. It was just on a loop. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be checking that one out.
Yeah. Also, the song is very vocal heavy. And I know that every mom of teenagers says this, but like the music today is not music. My son thinks he's a DJ and just like, please turn that noise off. And there's something about, I think, vocals that are the purest form of sound, right? Like instruments have changed and evolved over generations. Today, my kid calls electronic music. To me, that's, like if it's not on some like string instrument, it's not real. And then when you can bring it back down to vocals, vocals don't lie. There's something so profound about the way air moves through you. I think we mentioned this on the last time I was on your show, that one of the things I specialize in is breathwork. So I can hear very deeply when someone speaks. I can hear how air passes through their system, where it's coming from, where it's flowing, and where it's not going. And so when I listen to music that is vocal, there's so much more than just sound that's coming through. There's the imprint of their life's journey and mission. And I just nerded out. Sorry. So that's why that song is there for me.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Cool. So you ready for the next question?
Go for it.
You want to just remind everyone who is Fally?
Who is Fally? Fally is a Gemini. So she's always changing. She's always evolving. I used to actually think that was like a negative thing. When people can say, oh, I'm an accountant and I've worked in this firm for 40 years. And then I started thinking that's what adulthood was supposed to be. You're supposed to fit yourself into some sort of figure out what you want to do when you grow up and be that for your entire adult life. And that doesn't work for me. I'm always learning and growing. So I did enter this work as a hypnotherapist. That's what I am. That's what I do. But hypnotherapy is a very broad field. So it's not just that we use hypnosis to facilitate therapeutic intervention for people, but there's also regression therapy, right? Going back to childhood. And then there's spiritual regression, taking people back to the womb or their past life, or to spiritual states like life between lives. So for me, hypnotherapy became my all-consuming world for a long time. And then but by virtue of being immersed in this, other doors also opened themselves up to me about different arenas that I felt needed more exploring, and I wanted to explore those things. So I went head first into breathwork about 7 years ago. And I as well went to school to become an intimacy counselor because I found that a lot of these life forces are all connected. I have this theory that food, sex, money, breath, and God are all the same thing. And your relationship to one is your relationship to all. So like all of my journeys have taken me to these kinds of fields. So hypnosis is more like therapy and also God-centered, and there's breath, and then there's sexuality and all of that stuff. And what I kind of do now is I teach courses online, I run trainings, and I do in-person workshops. I don't work with private clients anymore at this time, mostly because I have 4 kids and they are as private clienty as I get. All of my energy goes to those 4. And yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think it gets much more North Node in the 8th house than what you just described. So,
Remind people what the 8th house is all about.
well, I mean, you brought up the word intimacy, sex, it's the hypnosis part of it.
Yes.
Did I say intimacy already?
You did say intimacy.
Yeah. So it's the depth house.
The depth house.
Yeah.
And I have my moon in the 12th house, which is why I like deal with collective consciousness stuff. You know?
Yeah, that'll do it.
That'll do it.
The moon in the 8th, or sorry, the moon in the 12th it's an interesting placement.
It is. And, you know, I'm a very punctual person. Like everything in my life is on time.
Awesome.
And my mom told me recently that I was actually born 2 days overdue, 3 days overdue or something like that. I was
Me
like,
too.
what? I was like, how? That's so out of alignment with my character to be born overdue. And then when I got a chance to really see my astrology chart for the first time and go over all of the planetary alliances, I was like, I know why I wasn't born overdue. I was waiting for this particular star configuration. I chose that moment of my birth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got nothing to add to that one. So, I mean, for me, it was the same thing. I think I came out 3 days late. But the irony for me is that my mom was on bed rest for 4 months because I wanted to come out a little bit earlier. And then I ended up coming out late.
Because that's what we do. It's like, no, the party starts when I get here.
Yeah. And I felt that same way because for me, I have both my moon and sun in Taurus, and my moon is right behind my sun. So it's like right at the end of the balsamic phase there. So if I would have come out 3 days earlier, my moon wouldn't have been in Taurus.
So you're very much what you see is what you get. The moon and the sun, they're like aligned in that way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a very private person.
Right.
And I think that's also been changing a bit the last couple of years as I've been testing my vulnerability and becoming more open. But I guess the only difference is for something like the podcast right now is I put a little bit of that voice on at the beginning when I'm saying, you know, welcome back to the show. Other than that, this is pretty much who I am. I may be a little more joking in some situations, and then at the same time, much more serious in others because it's like I like to bring a lighthearted approach to the show. But I don't think that anyone who discovers me from the show and then has a session with me is shocked about the person they're working with. It's me, although I still show up a different way for a session because I mean business when we show up as that, not, you know, in the financial sense, but
yeah,
it's just like, no, we're doing this right now. Like, you're not going to get me being all goofy all the time. Like, that's just, yeah.
Right. I think that, you know, putting on a uniform or, you know, putting on pants before you leave the house doesn't really, you know, there are socially appropriate norms, right? We want to act one way on a podcast and we'll act another way when we're in private, but it doesn't really change who we are internally.
Yeah.
And then there are some people who, it's not just that they act 2 different ways in terms of social norms, but they actually are 2 different people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not a Jekyll and Hyde type.
No.
No.
No. Yeah, this is me.
Yeah.
All right. I'm trying to think of how to structure this because I'm so excited for what we're going to talk about today. So I think I will say beforehand, I sent Fally I think an email would be more grammatically correct there. I sent Fally an email last night saying, hey, here's what I'd like to talk about tomorrow, which is today. And I was very general with it because I wanted to, this is definitely not a gotcha, but I wanted it to be as fresh for Fally as it was for everyone else, what I'm going to share. So she really doesn't know. I just told her we're going to be talking about a past life that I had. And then where it goes from there. So there's a new question I've been asking everyone, and I think it's particularly potent for this conversation today. So my next question for you is, what do you believe in?
I'm a Gemini. You're going to have to get more specific than that. In what sense of the word?
Well, this is where it's going to get fun.
Mm-hmm.
What do you believe in?
I believe that everybody does need a value system. And there is a question, I think, and we're going to play semantics for a moment, but there is a difference between morals and values. And morals tend to be externally put onto you so that you can fit in with a group. And we take our morals very seriously because belonging is very important to us. But morals are not universal. Like, we like to see that they are. Like, everybody who is moral would agree, but that's not necessarily true. Because if you look at different cultures, what's morally acceptable in one culture is morally reprehensible in another, right? So I don't necessarily believe in morals to that degree. And I know people are going to argue with me about semantics and what we mean by morals, but I'm just going to be very broad about this. But I believe in values. I believe that that everybody has certain core values that they stand for and they believe in. And they're very personal, but they're not just personal. They're also, if you're serious about them, they're more than just personal. They become a gift that you give to the world that you live in. So I believe in kindness. Like, that's really important for me. I believe that everything that you can do in the world can be done in a kind way. I don't think that there's any reason ever to be unkind, right? I'm not always great at it. Sometimes I'm human. And in my community, because I'm religious and because I'm married to a rabbi, people don't like hearing me say that. They're like, oh, isn't Torah your highest value? Like, isn't Judaism your highest value? And I would like to say that it is. When you speak to a religious person, you expect to hear that religion or the religious lifestyle is their highest value. But even in Judaism, we have an expression where we say derech eretz kadma la Torah, which is derech eretz translates to the way of the land, but what it really means is kindness, integrity, interpersonal relationships. And what this phrase means is that all of that comes before Torah. Like, you have to be a good human before you do all of the religious stuff. So yeah, while it would be nice to say that I believe in the religious values, the religious lifestyle, I do. But before all of that, my baseline, what I believe in is be a good human. Like, just do whatever it takes to be a good human. We're here, we talk about regressions. We talk about other lifetimes that we've lived. And each lifetime that we live, we get a multitude of experiences to add to our soul journey, right? But underneath it all, like, experiences come and go. They'll change. Every life you're going to be doing different things. But at its baseline, what have you learned? What are you actually taking with you? And if it's not be a good person, be a good human, be kind, spread goodness, then it's great to talk about all of these wonderful experiences you've had in other lifetimes. But what do they really add up to if you at your core can't be a good person?
How did that feel for the Gemini to respond in that way to a
And
question
I was
that
going to
broad?
ask you, was that succinct enough, or did I just talk you, or did I make that too broad?
For that question, I want it to be broad. Well, at least for the question I'm asking, because I don't think that there's a uniform way to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
Because what someone believes in, I think it's just like you said with morals, that what's morally acceptable in one culture may not be in another one. Beliefs, I feel, are the same way. So I don't think it necessarily has to be a belief in religion or God or a higher power and that question is asked, I think someone can even answer, I believe in air.
Right. And I think there's also a difference between asking someone, what do you believe? And what do you believe in?
Mm-hmm.
I believe a good many things, but there are very few things that I believe in that I will actually devote my life to and be dedicated to and get angry about.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like kindness, right? Being a good person. It's one of those things that I strongly like. That's, if you would ask me like what shakes me, like what will make me cry when people are just not being nice. I know it sounds elementary, it sounds childish, but you know, when we're kids, when you talk to a kindergartner, you're like, be nice, be nice. And then you come to the adult world and no one's talking about being nice anymore. You're like, why? Do we believe in being nice? Or is it just when we tell a kid be nice, we're just like, don't cause any trouble because you're annoying me. Right? And it's like, if we really believed in being nice and we really integrated that, like we would be living in a much better world. So that is still something that gets to me very strongly.
I agree. I think we should do a separate podcast on that one because I could just go in a million different directions there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share a little story first, and then I'm just going to open up the floor for you. At this point in my life, I'm 37, and I think I'm doing my best to understand the difference between belief and faith. And I just want to share a little story first about when I was 21. I was feeling very lost at the time. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I turned to religion at that point. You know, I also am Jewish. And there was an opportunity for me to go on a trip to Israel. I'm like, okay, yeah, I need to feel that fulfillment. And I'll just first say with this, what I didn't quite understand at the time, but what I'm understanding more and more as time goes on, is Judaism, not a person. Christianity, not a person. Islam, not a person. Hinduism, not a person, and so on and so forth. And I think that a lot of my anger post-trip translated into me viewing religious institutions as the problem and evil, and viewing them as people in a sense, that they are causing harm. So on this trip, like I don't, it's not about pointing fingers, but it was with an organization which had an agenda, and they were very good at what they did. And I'll just say, I had an amazing time on that trip. Absolutely amazing. I wouldn't trade it for anything. If I had the opportunity, knowing what happened, I would have gone again. It was just an amazing experience. So there was an amazing takeaway from that experience. And as the trip went on and on, I started to become more and more, I don't know if disenchanted would be the right way to say it, but maybe even disillusioned. Like going for one thing and then being almost in a sense of the feeling of not wanting that, and feeling even more lost as a result of that, because I felt that I was going to find fulfillment by seeking that out. And we were in a seminar about, I think was it called the Torah codes or the Bible codes? Are you familiar with those?
I'm guessing at where you might have been, right? So like I know I'm familiar with what you're talking about. I don't know if it's the Torah codes. It's probably the Torah codes. Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're the same thing. I get it. I know what you're talking about.
And before I explain it a little more, in this seminar or lecture, I was fascinated by this concept. Absolutely fascinated, because I'm someone who has always been more to the side of science, of wanting to see that proof, than, of course, becoming a past life regressionist. Kind of threw that one in the wind a bit. Although I still operate from that place of, I believe in past lives. I don't know it to be a fact, but I believe in it. But anyways, what was presented to us was that the Torah codes or Bible codes was a mathematical formula or equation where there were events that were hidden inside of the Torah. And that if you use this code, these events would be spelled out. So it was almost as if to say, God knew that these events were going to happen. So God hid them in there. Again, please, everyone, don't quote me on this because it's been 16 years since I was sitting in this lecture. And I was fascinated by that concept because to me, that would have been the closest thing to proof that you could get. And of course, there's always an argument that could be made. Well, if you're looking for something, you can always find it. But, maybe, maybe not. So the thing was, and this is also where I want to differentiate the difference between a religion and people. There were messages that were being instilled on this trip, and not the fault of the religion, but just people, where it was placing one group of people on a pedestal and saying that all others were beneath. And that God was always watching out for a certain group of people, but not others. And in the Torah codes or Bible codes, there were events where the Jews were harmed, where if these codes were true, there was a foresight of this event is coming. And I believe the class was being taught by a rabbi. And I raised my hand and I just said, this is absolutely fascinating. Absolutely. I'm so fascinated right now. But the question I have is, if God is always looking out for the Jews and always wants what's best for the Jews, why hide this? Why not just say, get out of those buildings on that September day? Or do not get on those trains when they come, when they say you're going to be going for a better life. Or leave this part of Europe during the Inquisition, and so on and so forth. And the answer I got is, you do not question what God wants. But of course, me being who I am, I said, oh no, I am. Because this is what I've been fed for the entire duration of this trip. And to me, this is the icing on the cake where my opinion could completely shift. And I could more fully dive in to a belief in God. So I said, why didn't God, say X, Y, and Z? You do not question what God wants. And this guy was just going nuts. Keep in mind, this is, I don't know, about 100, 200 people are in this thing. This guy's just going off. At this point, I'm a stupid 21-year-old. And I was like, I'm out. I'm going to sit through the rest of this. But other than that, I'm checked out. And, there were people on the trip who were very supportive of the way I pushed back against that. And of course, I liked that at the time. And even the rabbi who was chaperoning our trip, he was, I wouldn't say fully supportive, but I think he understood where I was coming from. But I let that one event shape many years of my life when it came to my view on religion. I did not separate the person from the religion. And that was unfortunate. And that's on me. I do not blame anyone else for making me have that view. Because it wasn't just about Judaism at that point also. It was about all religions and viewing people as the institution. But I think what's been happening for me the last couple of years is I've been unraveling that and seeing that the person is separate from the institution. Just because a church, members of a church do horrible things to some people, it's not every church, and it's not the church. It's people. Just because there are some religions who preach extremism, it's not the religion necessarily that's preaching it. It's the people who are doing it. And even people who shape let's just say that God did write certain rules in religions. Some people just will shape that message to fit the mold of the message that they want to put out. So it's not the fault of the religion. It's the fault of people. And there was a past life that I recently discovered. And I'll say I made the cardinal mistake of of looking into it after, where I'm an advocate of my clients looking for certain things after regression or looking things up. But I will say for this person, there were a couple books written about this person. Not probably a very small minority of the population has heard of them. So I had about 3 books to choose from while looking. And in a situation like that, I would encourage people not to go look up this person or read more about them, because I believe that a regression could potentially be shaped by what you've read or take you out of the moment if things do not line up with what you've read. And there were things that I read about this person that I really liked. And
Can we interrupt you for 1 second? This person
Sure.
that you saw yourself as having been in another life, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there were things that this person supposedly did. I don't know if to be a fact. That was like, wow, that was pretty cool. I really like that. And
Did
then
you read this after your regression or before?
after.
Oh, after. So you got the name during the regression, and then you started Googling and finding out, and you found all this little bit of information. Just for clarity. Okay.
Yeah, which I shouldn't have done, because now it's
But
solely
we've all
sit for
done
me.
it. But we've all done it.
Yeah, but I should know better at this point, because I'm one of these people who I'm like, look, if I'm going to preach it, I better practice it.
Yeah, but there are some lifetimes we do these things, and there are some lifetimes we don't. There are some lifetimes we just need that extra little bit of proof, and there are some ones that we can sit with,
Yeah, okay, I'll cut myself some slack there. But when I got to the part where this person did some things, supposedly, that were being presented in this book as being virtuous and good, I'm like, oh, I do not like that. I don't like what they did in the name of God. But so it's also like where it's always interesting of history being written by the victors. It's like, horrible. Like, I may not agree with what the other people are doing, but just, I'm doing this in the word of God, X, Y, or Z. I don't know. So it's like, I also wonder if some of the underlying feelings that I've had about certain things, because I don't believe that any religion is necessarily more right than another. I'm open to the possibility that there's truth in all, and that there's beauty in all religions, and that there is ugliness in all religions, because it's about the people. It's not necessarily about the religion. So that's where I'm kind of at in this journey. And that's the thing, is I'm not going to bring up the name because it doesn't matter. I'm not going to talk about the things because I don't want anyone to be like, oh, let's figure out who it was. It's so inconsequential, where it's not even worth it, because it doesn't matter. It's not who I am now. Even
It
if
was
this,
someone, I'm guessing, that was served in some sort of religious capacity, if you're saying that they operated in the name of God.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I wonder if some of the underlying feelings I have are residual from that life of maybe feeling guilty for what I did while looking back on it after. But then again, I don't know, because I'm open to the possibility that God was speaking to this person, and that the other people were doing bad things. Open to the possibility of, like, it's, do you know what I mean? It's that weird gray area where I never want to be like, oh, that's a bunch of bullshit. But, and it's not just because I believe that I was this person, inconsequential who, because I don't know. I don't know all around. And I don't know where the hell I'm going with this either. But this is the point where I'm going to say, Fally, what you got?
So I've been taking notes as you're talking. I'm like, there are so many things that I would love to address. So I'll go kind of in order of what I wrote down, and then we'll take it from there. So as you're talking about your trip back then, you're actually making me think of one of my favorite books. It's called Small Gods by Terry Pratchett. And for people who are not familiar, Terry is not alive anymore, but he was a master satire novelist. And his stuff is so smart and so good. So the book Small Gods is essentially, he doesn't name it with those names, but it's essentially about the church and the Inquisition He doesn't use the word church, and he doesn't use inquisition. It's called quisitors. It's very clear what he's alluding to. And the point of the book is about this inquisition that's doing everything in the name of God. But God himself has fallen out of the sky. God himself has lost all his power. And the church has overtaken the whole world. Like, everybody worships this church. Everybody talks about this God, but the God himself has shrunk, because in order for gods to exist, belief feeds gods. And so gods become powerful as a result of us believing in them. And everyone stopped believing in God because they believed in the church. They believed in the Inquisition. And this one little novice finds this God and hears the voice of God. And God is not what he expected God to be. God curses in the book. God's a little bit of an asshole. He's a turtle, actually, in the book. And this novice is like, it can't be that you're God. Like, why me? And it just really underscores how we've stopped listening. Forget about serving. We've stopped listening for the voice of God. And we've basically made our own assumptions about what God is saying. And we do a lot of things in the name of God. And now what we're serving is we're serving the name of God. We're serving the institution that was built in the name of God. But God himself has become irrelevant. And it's sad. It's really sad when you talk about your experience, because you're not the only person that I've heard talk about an experience like that, where you went to get inspired and instead there was an agenda, put at you. And I don't know that God ever has an agenda. And I'll talk about that in a minute, because you had some other things. I think the difference between faith and belief, right? Again, semantics. I think one is believing in an ideal, right? And the other is about being willing to put yourself on the line for that, right? There are some things that you know conceptually or theoretically, and then there are some things that you know experientially. And that might be the difference for me between faith and belief. One I'm willing to act upon, and the other I'm just believing in an idealistic manner. And I think they're sisters, right? They should ideally work together. If you believe in something strongly enough, you should be willing to act on it. But sometimes you don't believe in something strongly enough. You only believe it with half of your heart, right? So you're not ready to act on it. I have a thought about what religion is for me, but I'm going to skip that. I'm going to come back to it, because it also ties into this thing of God loves me more. I've always taken issue with this, that the Jews are called the chosen nation. It feels very racist. It doesn't sit well with me. And I've had to sit with, like, what does that actually mean for me? And especially as a past life regressionist and the work that I do, I wasn't always Jewish in all of my lifetimes, right? So, like, what does that mean? Like, if I'm Jewish and I'm chosen and I'm special, I should have been special forever. It doesn't work that way. And what I realized is that we were chosen for a specific role in this world. That's all it is. And I'll talk about that role in a minute, because I think it ties into what I think religion is. Everyone was chosen. Everyone was chosen. And I think what God was asking, he had a very specific idea in mind. And he said, who is willing to carry out this particular idea? And God also asked the other nations, and we'll talk about that in a second. And the Jews said, we're good. We're good with taking this on. And that's where the word chosen comes in for. I don't think that we're more chosen than anyone else. I think we were chosen for a specific role, in the same way that everybody else was chosen for their specific role. So why the much ado about Jews? Well, we have to understand what we believe our role is. So I'll go there in a sec. But to come back to your personal experience about when the rabbi said you don't question God. So I had that a lot in my childhood, because I'm a sincere seeker. I want to learn. I ask the questions because I sincerely want to know. But when you're a kid and you don't always know how to phrase it, or you're asking questions of people who are not accustomed to giving answers, then they make it you the problem, right? And I think the hallmark of every one of our ancestors, our forefathers, is that they were curious. They asked a lot of questions. Like, Abraham would not have found God if he wasn't willing to ask questions of all the other gods, right? And by the way, Judaism does not believe that there aren't other forces at play. There are powerful forces. We just believe in the unifying force that created them all. So there's a master force, right? But Abraham like asked questions of all the forces in order for him to come to the conclusion that there must be a unifying master God above them all. Moses asked a lot of questions. Every time you look into the Bible, he's always asking God. He's so inquisitive. He's like obnoxiously, annoyingly inquisitive. He asks so many questions. So for me, that's my ideal. I believe that Judaism, we literally have a whole Passover Seder that is designed around questions. We ask the 4 questions. We designed a Passover Seder to get the kids to ask questions. It is not a holiday of answers. It's a holiday of questions. Judaism is always about questions. They say, you know how to recognize a Jew. He answers a question with a question. You never get an answer from a Jew. You only get a question from a question. So when I hear about the Bible codes, I'm fascinated by them as well, but just notice that they're only viewed in past tense. So, I think aliens are going to be in open human contact with the human race by 2030. Show me that in the Bible codes. Like, can we predict the future based on the Bible codes? Because when we go to a Bible code class, it's really, really nice, but you're only seeing them in hindsight and retrospect, and that's 2020. It's really nice to have seen that the Holocaust is really written about in the Bible codes, but that's not the first Holocaust that ever happened to the Jews, and it's not going to be the last. But if there are Bible codes, then I'm sure we can see what's coming, but we somehow have not figured that out yet. And I also don't know, I don't know that that's the point, that God loves us so much more, that he's trying to cushion us or protect us. I don't know that that's the point. And I know that's a terrible thing to say, but again, we're past life regressionists. We've dealt with a lot of stuff in our other lives, Jewish or non-Jewish, right? We've been through some really difficult experiences in the 1,000 lifetimes we were on Earth. And you're not suffering now because of that. When we go into a regression and we see that, we just really accept that it was part of our life's mission and our journey, right? So I really don't like this dogma of like, God loves you best, but then he treats you terribly. And then you have to accept it without asking questions. I just don't think that that's a realistic formula. I don't think that that's how God works. I think we're also ascribing human traits to God, and God is not human. And you were saying Judaism is not a person, right? It's not a person, but it's also not an institution, right? And we've made it into people. We've made it institutionalized, but no one's actually talking about what or who God is. And so is it okay if I just ramble on a little longer about this? All right.
Sorry. For everyone, I was nodding my head because I'm loving this right now.
All right. I just know I saw you taking notes. I know that there's stuff you want to say, so, at any time, but I'll go on a little longer.
Oh, yeah. Whatever you got, keep going. You
All
got
right.
it. Yeah.
So I don't like the word God because I think God and dogma have the same words, have the same letter. And I think God is very charged, but I love the word creator, right? Creator just means like the artist, the movement or the energy that is in constant growth, creator. So that's the word I'm going to use right now for God is creator, because what you get a sense when you use that word is that it's ever evolving. God just seems very fixed. It's like that scary man in the sky holding a trident and saying that you're going to burn, versus creator is ever evolving. It's always creating. It's artsy. There's always a flow. And I believe that the way Judaism evolved was 1,000 lifetimes ago. People really felt the energy that was always the movement that was taking place in the world. Put it this way. You ever saw a 2-year-old dance? You have music playing and that kid is just rocking out, right? No one taught the 2-year-old how to dance. It's like this rhythm that it moves through their body, right? It's amazing to watch little kids dance because the world hasn't shut them out yet. They're not body conscious. They're completely surrendered. And what you'll see is they're not trained. They don't dance well. But if you'll change the music up, right? If you'll put a slow song versus a fast song, or you'll change the rhythm, the little kid's body is going to adapt to the rhythm of what's moving through them because they're so surrendered. They really allow that movement to move through them. And I think that creator is a movement, and the world is always riding in harmony with that movement. And what religion was or is it spoke to that movement. It used words, or it used it tried to capture that movement, that art that was ever flowing. And I think there was a time many eons ago in our history, maybe when the temple was around, that we didn't need the dogma of religion because we lived and breathed that movement. We were like children, and that movement was moving us and was moving through us. So we didn't need to be told what to do because we moved with that. And then we stopped being in our bodies and we stopped listening and we started dictating the Torah. And it's kind of like, imagine going to the ballet and watching the ballet versus someone writing down what they witnessed at the ballet. And they're saying the ballerina stood on her tippy toes and then did a half turn and a 3/4 turn and a jump and was lifted and was dropped. And imagine reading the ballet versus listening and watching. And I feel that religion today has become a transcription of something that we were supposed to dance. And of course, everything is getting lost in translation. You can't read about a dance. And not only that, there's a difference between somebody who was taught how to dance and somebody who is just allowing that movement to flow through them. And I think that was the evolution of religion. Religion was a dance. Religion evolved as a movement that turned into a synchronized dance. And we became so conscious only of the synchronization and the fixed, rote, and it stopped looking like a dance. We started looking like Mr. Robot. So that's my take on religion. And I don't know if you've ever experienced or heard of family constellations, but constellations are essentially a form of therapy that help us get back in touch with that movement. And family constellations is quite broad. There are many different ways of doing it, but I practice something called movements of the soul, which is essentially this. And I'll give you a description that, again, it's like describing ballet, so it's not going to land very well, but I'll give you an idea. I ran a constellation a few weeks ago. We're recording this in, end of September, so we're right around in the middle of the Jewish high holiday calendar, time. But it was right before the Rosh Hashanah holiday. We did a workshop, like a one-day workshop. And I wrote out 30 index cards with different key phrases that had to do with this time of the Jewish high holiday, the calendar. So I wrote like forgiveness, God, shofar, king, Jews, Messiah, like all of these, different words that had to do with the time of year. And every person in the room, there were 30 people in the room, they all got an index card, but they weren't allowed to look at it. They had to fold it and put it in their pocket. And all of a sudden, something happened. And I'm not going to go into the mechanics of how this happened or why this happens and what prep you need to do in order to get into that space. But for the next hour and a half, people were moving around the room saying, I want to stand next to you. I want to bow to you. And it was amazing watching this orientation of 30 people needing to move and contort. People were laying, people were standing, people were crying. Some people were vomiting, like people were like, you need to go away from me because I will vomit if you stand close to me. And at the very end of the hour and a half, there was a beautiful symmetry that took place. There was a circle, and all of this is done without speaking. I'm the only one who speaks because I'm the facilitator. I'll ask, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Check in. Do you need to move? At the very end, there was this beautiful symmetry. There was a circle happening. There were a few people that were not even relevant, like they weren't in the circle. And the whole circle was waiting. We knew that there was someone that needed to be in the center. And at the very end, someone said, it's me. Someone who had been quiet the entire time and just said, it's me. I didn't even know he was in the room. And he moved to the center and in the circle, he faced me. We looked into each other's eyes. We both started crying. And that was the end. And then we all take out the cards. And it was amazing. This guy's card said forgiveness. In the center of the circle, like that's what the whole room was waiting for. And my card said shofar, which is the time of year that we blow the shofar, which is meant to generate all of this forgiveness. And he and I just locked eyes and we started crying. There was this one moment where a guy stood up on a chair and I was like, why are you standing on a chair? And he said, I want to give hope for the people. I want them to know like this hope is coming. And some other guy says, you sit down right now. It's not your time. And the guy got quiet and sat down. The guy who stood up, his card said Messiah. The guy who said, sit down, it's not your time, was God. And it was just so fascinating that no one knew what roles they were playing until the end. And at the end, it was so interesting to see what came into the center of the circle. It wasn't God. It wasn't the Messiah. it wasn't any of those typical things that we associate with religion. It was forgiveness. And then when forgiveness had stepped into the circle, there was one last person who spoke, and she said, "What took you so long?" And her card in Hebrew said chesed, which is like loving kindness. And it was just so indicative of like that forgiveness is a kindness that we bestow. It's not something that you earn. It's a kindness that is given. And it was so powerful for everyone to be in that room and see that you come to these times of year, especially the high holidays are so intense, especially if you're religious, right? And to be like, wait, what are the holidays actually about? It's not about God, putting you in heaven or hell. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about this beautiful energy of forgiveness and loving kindness. And the people who weren't even in the circle at the very end, it was fascinating. Like, God was not in the center circle at the end. Neither was Messiah. There were a lot of religious practices that didn't make it into the center circle. So I know I'm going off on a tangent, but for me, that's what religion really is coming back to that movement. And when you experience the movement, then you notice that a lot of the religious practices that we have are really just embodied forms of that movement. They're nods to that movement. But a lot of us are practicing empty practices without an indication or awareness that there was supposed to be a movement coming through those practices. And then there are certain practices that don't seem to align at all. And that's where I have to question, like, where do these practices actually originate? Are they dogma? Have we made them up? Are they sourced in anywhere? Why are they so far from the movement? And it's been very, very interesting for me to unravel that. But going back to this one last piece about being the chosen nation and being the Jews, what was that thing that we were chosen for? Right? And I'm going to say it was the 10 Commandments. And there are huge misconceptions that people have around the 10 Commandments. Because, first off, you speak a little Hebrew, right?
I remember the Shema.
Yeah, no, okay. So in Hebrew, the 10 Commandments are called the Aseres HaDibros. But the word dibros does not mean commandments. The word for commandments is tzvaos or mitzvos. So dibros means words or promises. So there's this huge misconception when we say the word 10 commandments, they are not the commandments. They are the 10 promises that God has given. The other thing is that they're not actually new. The 10 commandments are not earth-shatteringly new. They were, by the time we came to Sinai, they had already been given before Sinai. And they're part of the 7 Noahide laws. Like, they were practiced since the beginning of time. They make a lot of sense. Like, all the other nations of the world were essentially, well, not all, but many of the other nations of the world were essentially practicing these 10 ways of life. So what is so special about the Jews who were chosen to stand at Sinai and like take these upon themselves? And if you understand that they're not commandments, they're promises, what God is really giving over is his blueprint for creation. He's saying, I created this world, and I'm going to tell you how. This is the source code for creation. And what I'm asking you to do is basically be my janitors. Like, I'm asking you to make sure that creation keeps aligning with my source code. I want I'm God, I'm creator, but I want people to help me keep this world in order, the order in which I created it. Now, all the other nations of the world were already doing that. So what were the Jews basically taking upon themselves? Not the 10 commandments, not the 10 words. What they were taking upon themselves was the bringing that forth into every generation to serve as a reminder. Like, oh, we're out of alignment. We got to come back to alignment with these 10 promises, with a manual of creation. And I see your face. You're kind of like, okay, so how is this the manual of creation? It's actually really, really simple. It makes so much sense when you look at it through this lens. The first one is I am God. I'm creator, right? That's it. That's the first one. We can all agree on that. The second was there shall be no other gods. If you understand, now you have to understand these work in linear fashion. God says, if you agree to the first one, you won't have any other gods. You won't serve money. You won't serve fame. You won't serve society. You won't need to. Why? Because you're going to be in alignment with creator, with that ultimate first movement, with the first thinker, with the first movement. When you're in alignment with that, you need nothing else. So you will not have idols, and idols don't just mean religious idols. They just mean money, fame, success, society, right? And if that is true for you, if you believe in the first two, then the third one will be you'll never use God's name in vain. And God's name is really also your speech, because God's ineffable name, which is another whole journey to uncover, but it's essentially the 4 parts of a deep breath. God's name, the ineffable name, is YHWH, right? The tetragrammaton. Do you know that?
It's for Yah, right?
Yeah, except you can't say it because there are no vowels. So Yahweh is just an attempt, but it's really YHWH. It's actually right there behind me in this Hebrew letters that you see behind me. In Hebrew, that's the Yud He Vav He. And the way it's pronounced is the way you take a deep breath. When you inhale through your nose, your tongue touches the roof of your mouth. Like when you say a Y, yeah, right? When you make a Y sound, your tongue has to go up. So when you inhale through your nose, your tongue has to go up, touch your palate. At the top of your breath, there's an H, there's a pause. The exhale is through the mouth, that's the W. And at the end of the exhale, there's another H. So YHWH is just the sound of a deep breath. And every article of speech, every utterance has to ride on the back of a deep breath. So God says the third one of his promises are, if you really are in line with Creator, all of your speech, you will never speak in vain. Every one of your speech, every word that you will say will be aligned with, you will understand the power of speech, right? And then comes the fourth where he says, you will set aside a day for me, which is the Shabbos, the Sabbath. Because again, God says, I know the world I created. It's a world of distraction. So you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to, because you're going to be so aligned with me, you're going to create these moments of coming to me, like whether it's meditation or getting, whether it's the formal Sabbath, however you keep it. God says you need to come back into alignment to keep that alignment, which brings us into the fifth, which is honor your father and mother. And it does not say love your father and mother. It says honor. Because why? God says, because after all of that, and you really understand how creation energy works and comes down onto this earth, you will understand that you are only here via your father and mother coming together and God's energy passing through them to create you. And so you will honor your father and mother for having brought divinity down to create you. And then comes the next 5. And I never understood how the next 5, the first 5 makes so much sense. Like once we understand divinity and how we work into that, then we can understand how it comes to our parents. Like our parents birthed that divinity to create us. But then the next one says, you shall not murder. And you're like, what? Like, where does that come? Like right after parents, you go straight into murder. And it's also kind of things I always wondered about. Like when we were in school and I was raised religious and they're like, the 10 commandments are what make you Jewish. And I'm like, really? I don't know. If God had to pick 10, why these 10? Like, I don't think about murder on a daily basis. Like, you shall not commit adultery. Like, I'm 16. I don't think about these things. Like, really, a lot of the things that are in the 10 commandments are not things you struggle with on a daily basis. Like, God should have just been like, keep kosher. I can understand why that would be on the 10 commandments for being Jewish, but it's not. These are the 10 things that make me important. Like, what about this is important? I mean, I can live many lifetimes and never consider murder. Why is this here? And the reason why it's here is because what makes someone incapable of committing murder is when they don't recognize divinity in another. And what makes them not recognize divinity in another? When they don't recognize divinity in themselves. How does that happen? Well, if you don't honor your father and mother, if you don't accept them as the right conduits for divinity to having brought you here, then you're gonna murder parts of yourself, right? Like you're a mix of your mom and your dad. So if there are parts of your dad that you hate, there are parts of you that you hate. So you've murdered off parts of yourself. So that you commit an inner murder, and then you can commit external murder. And then it brings us into adultery. Like, what's adultery? Adultery is when you're not showing up 100% in a relationship, where you're supposed to be there for your partner, but your heart is somewhere else. So yeah, if you've committed internal murder and you've put parts of yourself in shadow, of course you're committing adultery. And then it moves to you do not steal. Well, what is stealing, right? Stealing is when you're taking something from someone without their knowledge. And when you think about adultery, that's a form of stealing. You have told your partner you're in a relationship, but you've stolen their time, you've stolen their presence, right? And then it comes to, you shall not steal, right? You shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not, Wait,
The
wait,
land
missing
one?
Which one?
Is it the land one?
No, that's the last one. You shall not covet. I don't remember. I'm missing one, but essentially the last one comes, you shall not covet, right? How could God tell you not to covet? How can he tell you not to feel something? The God is not telling you how to feel. He's saying all of these make sense in a linear fashion. If you are coveting, what it tells you is that something is out of alignment above that. Coveting is a symbol of like, oh, if you don't believe that everything comes from God and everything is divinity, right? Of course you're going to covet. You're going to look to somebody else to get your needs met, right? So what God is saying, I just gave you the blueprint of creation. That's how this is. And the Jews took it upon themselves to constantly bring the world back into alignment because the world was going to forget. At the time when the 10 Commandments were given over, the world was pretty much living in alignment. They were like, no one needs to talk about these things. We got this. We are experiencing this energy. This energy is very alive for us, right? There are instant ramifications when we move away from this energy. So we don't seem to think that we don't need this. And God was like, no, the world is going to go out of alignment. And that's why I'm asking someone, or I'm choosing someone to step up and take the onus of responsibility upon themselves to remind the world when they're out of alignment. And I tend to think that that's why the Jews have had a very hard fate. Because if you take responsibility for every time something is out of alignment, right? Whether it's conscious responsibility or it's consciousness responsibility, right? Like our tribe has taken that on. Of course, we're going to feel the brunt of a lot of when there's unrest in the world. Of course, we're going to feel it. But that also means we have to generate a lot of the goodness. Like we have to be responsible to not just be victims of it, but to start promoting the other side of it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take on what religion is and how it evolved and what it means for me. Like, I don't think that we're more chosen than anybody else. I just think that this is what our mission is here. And in terms of your personal feeling of, is this some karmic thing that you're experiencing, that in another lifetime you may have said something in the name of God, and then now you're being on the other side of that. So I think that that's godly in and of itself. When Moses met God in the Torah for the first time, he asked God, what's your name? And God says, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, which roughly translates to, I am that I am. And I've seen it written somewhere in such a clever way. What if God is saying, I am that I am? Not just I am that I am. I am that. I am. I'm that. I'm that. I'm that. And God is saying, I'm that, and I'm that, and I'm that, and I'm that, and I'm that. And this sentence can be read as backwards and forwards. I am that I am. It's back. You can read it both ways. Not in English, but in Hebrew. Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, it goes backwards and forwards. And God is like, I am all of those things. I am the victim, I am the perpetrator, and I am the energy in between. So you want to have I think our incarnations are God wanting to experience all facets of himself. So we go through all of those things. We go through the I am, and then the that, and then the I am again. So that makes perfect sense to me. And now I'm done.
Yeah, so I was enjoying that as a listener.
Sorry.
Oh no, that was great.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I wrote down a couple notes also based off what you said.
Mhm.
And I guess I'll start with belief versus faith.
Mhm.
I think what I took away from what you said is, if someone is standing at the edge of a cliff, if they say, I'm going to jump off because I believe that God will somehow give me a gust of wind and lower me to safety, that it doesn't quite go far enough with belief.
Right.
Whereas it's the faith component, where if I jump off this cliff, I have faith that God will lower me to safety.
And in Hebrew, the words for that are like emunah and bitachon. And bitachon is security. Like in Israel, the police it says bitachon on their security guards. That's what it says. And I think that that's the difference, right? There's belief, right? And then there's the security to be able to act on that belief.
Yeah, period.
Yeah, mic drop.
Another thing you brought up made me think of a conversation I had with someone a couple years ago. And it came to the dictation of the Torah. And what they said to me was, before the Torah was written, the Jews, I can't remember if this was verbatim, but it was that the Torah lived inside of the Jews, that they knew the Torah because it lived inside of them. And the way I viewed that at the time, I think I may have even asked the question, well, can it be argued then that writing the Torah down ruined the connection that every Jew had inherently with the Torah? And I, at the time, I think also viewed that as a point against religion. You know, that the act of doing this thing took away from the inherent magic inside of everyone. You know, I do believe that the outside world has dumbed us down a bit. And that's not just religion, it's other things as well. But that there is an inherent magic that is inside of everyone that just doesn't get the chance to come out. And I think that I was still shaped so much by that event in my life when I was 21 that I was looking for every reason to dislike religion. And seeing like, that is what took the magic away. You know, it's like, maybe it wasn't the worst thing in the world that they wanted to write it down just so they had it forever. Because what if something happened? So I think it's more emblematic of, it was my own projections of just being upset, of not fully understanding what I was feeling, and then saying, oh, it's religion's fault for writing it down. It's religion's fault for taking the magic out of these people. Maybe not, but
I think it's a catch-22 because something actually did happen. The Torah was written down at the destruction of the temple when the Jews were put into exile. And so they no longer were able to live with that movement. They were exiled. And you know, when you're under stress in your life, you're probably the most out of touch with your body because you're externally focused. You're focused on survival. You're not focused on, hey, what's my body trying to tell me here? Right? Mm-hmm. So they were exiled. They were banished from their land. And what was happening was a lot of these inner knowings were lost. Also, when they didn't have a temple and they couldn't channel those inner knowings into service, it was like, what we're going to forget, right? Though it was a catch-22 because Torah should never have been written down. It wasn't meant to be written down. But the rabbis of the time did agree that it was kind of like that was their only option. And they wrote it down to serve as a placeholder for the time that we would be ready for that movement to come back. And one of the things that we say about the time of the Messiah is that we're going to be gathered from all four corners of the earth. So the time of the coming of the Messiah is heralded by a feeling of gathering. And to be gathered, that's what it is. It's a pulling, it's a yearning that comes from inside of you, right? You hear the call. And that's what the rabbis, I think, knew, that they were writing it down until such time as the call would be heard again. And we say that the Messiah is going to be heralded by the call of the shofar. And again, do we mean that literally, or is it, again, a call that we hear inside of ourselves? The mistake that we've made is that we've externalized the Torah. We've made it about what has been written, right? We made it about the institution or about the people teaching and not about the movement. And then you have people who have a very genuine movement going on inside of them, and they're being told, you don't question God, right? And as you weren't questioning God, there was a movement that wanted to be expressed and not in a hateful way or an antagonistic way. And there's this wonderful book. I can't remember who wrote it, so forgive me, but it's called City of Ember. And they made it into a movie. And I actually used to sit and watch it with my kids once a year. In the summertime, there's one of these fast days where we commemorate the destruction of the temple and us being exiled. And we usually watch it then. And it's fascinating. It's about the world was going through a nuclear apocalypse. And so they saw it coming. And there were these builders, these engineers who wanted to save civilization. So what they did was they built an underground city that was outfitted to last 200 years. And they sent people, volunteers, down to live in this underground city for 200 years. And there was a time capsule that was supposed to open up after 200 years and guide these people out of the city to come back to, hopefully Earth would have regenerated after a nuclear attack after 200 years. And they gave them all the instructions to reset civilization. And of course, the people who went down as volunteers, they committed to not telling their children about Earth, right? The only way this was going to work was if they accepted that this is life. And like for the next 200 years, they were going to pretend as if this was the only civilization there ever was. And what happens is at one point, one of the mayors of the city, he has a heart attack and he dies. And the case, the time capsule that's supposed to open after 200 years gets lost. So what happens is the book opens up 250 years later, into the city. The city is falling apart. It's in disrepair. It's in ruins. They're running out of supplies. There are these massive rats that are bigger than humans overtaking the city. Everyone's starving. And of course, the people in authority are hoarding goods for themselves because it's like a do or die. It's me or you. And it's going to chaos. And there are kids who are asking questions. And there's one kid who actually finds the case. And she's piecing together clues. And she's trying to tell people we're not supposed to be here. There's an out. And everyone else is saying there is no out. There never was an out. This is the only civilization that ever existed and ever will be. And they're like, no, don't you see? The city is falling apart. We're starving. We're dying. The electricity is going out. We're living in the dark more than we're living in the light. And essentially, these kids end up finding the way out. And some people in the city end up following the kids and they go and create this new earth. And some end up choosing to stay behind because they're so afraid. And I feel like it's such a good allegory to religion, right? Our written religion was meant to be a time capsule until such time as we were ready to come back and repopulate and live in that movement. And we started worshiping the time capsule and we forgot that we weren't supposed to be here forever. We're supposed to come back to a different standard, a different way of embodying this. And I think it's always going to be the children who are going to show us the way out, and which is why the Passover Seder is geared for the children. The whole Passover Seder is designed to get the children to ask the questions, because when children ask the questions, they're going to lead you to places that you forgot existed or that you didn't know existed. And so it's really important to listen to the mouths of babies because they're making you think. And for you, at 21, yeah, you were a baby, right? Mm-hmm. You were a child and you were asking the right questions. And it's a shame when the elders are so committed to being elders that they forgot what they're actually in service of.
Yeah. I mean, I could go off on a rant on that.
Yeah.
That last part.
And we have that everywhere, right? It's not just in Judaism, it's everywhere.
Yeah. That'll be another episode. But, something else you brought up was about the Jewish soul. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as you're bringing up, I was right there with you when you were talking about how, I'm Jewish in this life. Do I believe in the potential of a Jewish soul? I don't know, maybe. But I've also seen many lives where I wasn't Jewish. So,
and I've also met many Jews without a Jewish soul.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but okay, I'll take your word for it. Wait, what does that mean?
So I think that, again, I don't know if you're familiar with the works of Michael Newton. Michael Newton, for those people who don't know, he's not alive anymore, but
Journey of Souls.
Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. And he was a past life regressionist who evolved more into spiritual regression about life between lives. And he mapped out the spirit world in regression, not just past life world, right? And what he really found was that there are different soul energies. He goes according to color, right? There are green souls or yellow souls, and they each have their unique soul print about their purpose on earth. And so I do believe that there's something that we would call a Jewish soul. I don't love that term because I think it's a little racist, right? Like it's just Jewish. It's not about that. I think that what we would define as the Jewish soul, maybe, would be similar to what I said before about they're committed to keeping the energy of the world in alignment. And they don't have to be born Jews to do that. I think when we say that all Jewish souls were at Sinai, I think what we mean is that every soul that committed to keeping this world on a certain track of, creator's alignment, they are considered those. And I think in Hebrew, we have two different terms. We have Knesset Yisrael and Klal Yisrael. So Knesset is more the gathering of souls that committed to this. Klal Yisrael are the human people who are born as Jews. And not everybody in Knesset, in the gathering of souls, is born Jewish, at least not in every lifetime. Sometimes we have to do the work in places where there are no Jews, right? And I think that's fine. I think, and the same way that, I think it's just as simple as saying someone is a healer soul or an engineering soul. They build systems, or they build, whether they're building physical bridges or they're building emotional bridges, right? They have an engineering kind of soul. And we need engineers all over the earth. I don't know that any soul is more special than another, but they do have different reasons for being here. And I don't think you have to be. I mean, I was a monk in another lifetime. My name was Bernard, and which is funny because that's my husband's name right now. And I was in this robe, this scratchy robe with a rope belt, and I was telling my congregation, "Forgive me, for I know not what I did." And I had never heard those words before, but I didn't know that that's part of the Christian, like, I think Jesus said that about, to his disciples about somebody who had sinned. He says, forgive them for they know not what they did. And I didn't know that terminology. And I was using it in a past life. I asked my congregation to forgive me because I felt that I was out of alignment with the doctrines that I had been preaching my whole life. And I was choosing to leave the church to go into solitude to kind of figure out how I can connect to God. I didn't feel like I was fit to lead. And I just felt like it was time for me to leave leadership and just focus on myself and my godly connection. And I remember when I came out of that regression thinking like, do I feel anything about that? The fact that like I'm married to a rabbi, and then there was this lifetime where not only was I not Jewish, my name was like a monk, a priest named Bernard, No, I feel nothing about it. It's because it felt very aligned with who I needed to be and what I was wanting to learn for my soul's evolution, at that time.
So what do you mean then? Because I don't remember exactly how it was you said about, with the quote unquote Jewish soul.
Yeah.
And some not having it. What do you mean by that?
Oh, because I don't know that necessarily every born Jew that is in a human fleshly body that was born into the current Jewish nation was necessarily part of that soul promise, right? Mm-hmm. I think that Jews have a very unique trajectory in lived experience on this earth. And what if it benefited your soul to be part of this trajectory at this point in time so that you can experience something, but you didn't necessarily have to be part of that commitment, that larger commitment that was made at Sinai, right? You just came to experience being Jewish in a certain lifetime because something was happening in this lifetime that, you could have, like, there was a woman actually who came to me once, and she had a past life where she was a man, she was not Jewish, and died a bachelor, having never married, and was very lonely. And she couldn't handle, like, oh my God, like, why wasn't I Jewish? She wasn't upset about being a man on the other lifetime. She was more upset about not being Jewish. And so we took her back in and we asked her that question. She says, oh, because if I had been Jewish in that time period, I would not have ended up a bachelor, because marriage is such a value by Jews. We marry young. And she's like, the shtetl would have forced me into some sort of marriage. I wouldn't have had much of a say in it. And what I needed to learn at that time in my life was what it was like to have no family by choice. And she's like, it wouldn't have happened if I had been born into a Jewish body at that time, right? So I think that it goes both ways. I think that there are people who are not part of the soul mission of the Jewish tribe, but they can get born into a fleshly human body for the purpose of experiencing something profoundly or uniquely Jewish at this time.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think that that's possible. So yeah. I think you even said it. It's maybe not, calling it a Jewish soul, but would it maybe be more of a purpose of alignment?
Yeah.
Of just like, that's what that particular group did. And you don't necessarily have to be Jewish.
Right. Or live as a Jew.
Yeah. So that makes me even think of something like the Exodus and Sinai, and wondering if someone such as Ramses could have been someone who had, so I'm hesitant to use the word Jewish soul also. So I'll say a soul of, I'm almost hesitant to use alignment as well. I'll just call it that group.
I think it would be hard to say. I think there are two things that really stand out to me in terms of Ramses. For reference, Ramses being the pharaoh he was the master of the Jews in Egypt. Two things come to me. In the Bible, when God and Moses are interacting with Ramses, it says a few times that God hardened Ramses' heart. And the rabbis pounce on this, like, what? What does that mean? Like, we all have free choice inside of our heart. right? So why did God do that? And I think that it was because God was very specific about there was a certain trajectory that needed to be happening. So I think Ramses was part of that. Like he was an instrument in God's plan. It was very clear that he was an instrument. Like in certain areas, there was no free choice for him. That does not mean he had a Jewish soul. I think he was instrumental in shaping the Jewish trajectory. And I think that anyone or anything that is, in when I was talking earlier about this idea of constellations or these movements, there is an idea that the victim and the perpetrator, their souls unite. They become one because there's a binding contract between a victim and a perpetrator. I'm going to say something that's going to sound really difficult for people to hear. But if you think about, say, I'll just put you on the spot. What are the top three things, top three descriptions you can give to Nazis? Just without thinking too deeply.
It's like, what did he say? A supremacist,
Mm-hmm.
extremist,
Mm-hmm.
disgusting.
Have you met ultra-Orthodox Jews?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And basically, you are what you hate. And when you don't honor God's instruments, right? And that's why God says, honor your father and mother. They are God's instruments. And when you don't honor them, you become them, right? So victims and perpetrators are they have a soul contract. And I think Ramses was part of that soul contract. I don't know what his soul was actually made up of, but he was definitely instrumental in shaping who the Jews became and evolved into. So we owe him a debt of gratitude, and we honor him for being that. The second thing that comes to my mind about Ramses is he served a higher power, and it wasn't God. I think that I may sound a little crazy for saying this publicly on a podcast, but there were definitely outside influences. We had alien technology back then. Ancient Egypt cannot be explained with human technology. It doesn't make sense that we would have had this technology, and then why did we lose it? I really believe that one of the reasons that Egypt was so powerful is that they had other technologies, right? And so Ramses is hard to really pin down because I think that when you serve something, you become part of that other thing. And I think that without getting too woo-woo or crazy, but let's say we do believe in aliens. Let's just put it out there for a moment. Like, let's say we believe in aliens, then where does God come in? Like, what was the whole journey of the Exodus and why was it so special? Because God was realigning his world to say, no more outside influences. We're not a planet to be mined or to be used for the benefit of others. Like, this world was created for a specific purpose. We're coming back into that alignment, right? Am I making sense with you?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So again, Ramses would be hard to pin down because if I do believe that he was serving some other power, the Jewish nation having to like break free of that power and, come back into our earthly alignment. And that's why it was so important. Like, why 2,500 years after creation? If we believe creation was 6,000 years ago, Sinai was about 2,500 years, 2,448 years after the day of creation. What took that long for God to give the Torah? Because the world had gotten so far out of alignment that it was basically an epic reset button. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, just with regards to in ancient Egypt and there being unexplained
phenomena.
Yeah, exactly. I'm open to the possibility of what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I also believe it's possible that there are just some technologies that we had without outside influences.
Sure.
That just disappeared. So,
but then why would they have disappeared? Where's the gap? What happened? What plunged us into the dark ages?
People. But I mean, I hear what you're saying. And regardless of outside influences that are from this world or something godly or just people, it's like there are things on our planet that we can't explain and things that we don't know about our history. And
right?
That's what I mean. It's like, it's tough for me to even have a baseline with a conversation like that when I'm like, I'm open to the possibility of all. Look, with the way the pyramids are built, I mean, sure, could they have lugged stuff just with ropes? I don't know, maybe. But it's also like when you have modern engineers who are like, we couldn't really do this in that amount of time now. You got to wonder in that respect. But sure, could they have? Could it have been the, all the man hours that were put into it and more people doing it than have, with the archaeologists saying it was this many? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, probably not. Maybe. I don't know. But maybe, it was still done with humans having the ability to do things that we've been led to believe are not possible.
So this actually just came up last night. My husband and I were talking, and he was, he had come up on a topic in his studies that he was asking me if I knew anything about. And it was more of a, let's call it spirit-centered topic, not religious, but more spiritual. And he asked me if I had ever known about these. He was kind of peppering me with questions. And I just had this moment of like, just stop asking questions, because you're trying to define something indefinable. And I can give you answers, but they're not going to give you what you're looking for. And if I gave you an answer that checked out in your mind, it would tell me that you're not actually here for this conversation. There are certain topics that are, again, they're movements, right? We don't talk about them, we experience them. It's kind of like chocolate. I can talk to you about chocolate, but you'll never understand it until you taste it, right? And I think that going back to that ancient world, yes, we live the world of movement, whether it was outside influences like alien technology, it doesn't matter. Essentially, there was a time where movements much more powerful than us came through us, and we're very far out of alignment with that. But what I am finding, and to bring this back to the regression topic, what I am finding is, interestingly enough, when people go to these places, past lives, and they see things that they were able to do in other lifetimes, that's going to bring me back to the song that I started with. I do feel like it's a time capsule. I've seen crazy things happen when people come out of session and they unlocked a former skill set for themselves. I've had people unlock languages. I have had people unlock like abilities to know herbal remedies. It was almost like it was waiting inside of their collective consciousness. And I think that's why the work that we do is so special and also so tricky, right? I think a lot of the people who come into this work are like, show me the movie. Tell me something interesting about who I was in a past life. And I think what's also interesting is that when we were kids, and it wasn't that long ago because we're the same age, right? So it's like, no one spoke this language when we were kids. Past life regression, nobody spoke about these things. And our parents' generation, for sure not. And a generation before that, for sure not. This is a very new concept. And it's been changing so rapidly as well, because when I first trained, you couldn't just go to a past life. You needed to have an amazing facilitator take you. And now people are just snapping into past life memories so quickly. Like in dreams, they're going there. In simple meditations on YouTube, they're going there. Past life is becoming not just a common language, it's becoming a common ability. It's unlocking very fast. And I think it was put there. I think the ability to tap into past lives was kind of suspended for a couple of thousand years until such time as the world was ready to reclaim its lost knowledge. And so that's where past lives get very tricky for me, because when someone tells me I want a past life session, there are only two viable reasons that I would think are suitable for someone having a past life session. Number one, healing, right? They're really struggling with something in this lifetime, and they've exhausted many other options, and maybe shedding some light into a larger pattern of something that may be karmically stuck with, very helpful. That I'm very for that. Or they're ready for their next stage in evolution, and there's something that they need, like a skill set that they've hidden from themselves, right? That they're ready to go back. And usually you can tell it's someone who's like on the cusp of something. Like they're telling you, like, I don't know, like I'm like a little bit of a failure to launch, right? Like I've had all of these skills and I just can't seem to like bring it back together. I've always been fascinated by a certain thing. And more of those people are, it's amazing the movements that I'm seeing in the world. People like waking up to this kind of knowledge. And it makes me very excited to see where we're going. And especially for those of us that are parents, to see who our kids get to be as a result of us having this kind of knowledge. Where I think parenting in a very new way where we're not only thinking of the kids' future, we're also thinking about them reclaiming their past. We're recognizing that their future is only relevant if they stay in touch with who they were and who they are. And we're nurturing those gifts that we see in them. And I know that we're kind of at a weird time in history. We're kind of like at the cusp of it, but who knows where that's going to take us in, 30, 40 or 100 years. I'm very excited for that. And I think I think talking about this time capsule piece, right? Like the past life stuff is very much the same idea as the religion being written down, right? I think everything precious, all of our magic had to be time capsuled for a certain amount of time. And I'm not sure why. I mean, we can speculate about like what made us lose all of those things, right? And you'll say it was people, right? But what motivated those people? What brought that darkness upon our earth that made the wise ones or the elders say, we have to protect our most sacred magic, our most sacred movements? And what made them say, 2020 or 2023 is the right time to start accessing those things again? What's coming? What did they know? What do the Bible codes say? Okay. So yeah, I'm very curious and excited about that.
I don't know. Maybe they'll find that in the Bible codes in 20 years or so.
In 20 years from now, they'll be, well, that's always how this works, right? I think a lot of this predictive stuff is, I remember the first time someone read my astrology chart. It was 2 weeks after I got married. And she told me, you're going to have a boy and you're going to have a girl. And I said, well, am I going to have more than that? And she says, if you want to. And at the time I interpreted it as in, well, yeah, I was married for like a minute. And all we talked about is like our first boy and our first girl. Like, you know how you dream, like you're going to name you just envision your perfect family, the first boy and the first girl. So it made a lot of sense. And we hadn't thought about having a third kid. But a year later, I found out that I was never meant, I dealt with infertility. And for me to have a third kid would meant having to want it. I had to put my body through a lot of invasive treatments to bring about a third child. But 7 years before, when she said that, that's not how I interpreted it, right? 7 years later, I was like, oh. And I don't think she could have told me that at that time, right? I don't know if that's how predictions really work.
7 years, huh?
7 years. Oh, what are you going to tell me now? What cycle was happening then?
Well, I mean, look, sometimes it's like, I always am hesitant to quote Freud, but I believe it was Freud who said sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Right.
So it may just be 7 years, but then again, I don't know, it sounds like a quarter of a Saturn cycle there. But who knows what else was going on? Who
knows what else was going on? A quarter of a Saturn sounds about right, knowing that child.
I mean, all in all, this conversation it's been absolutely fascinating. And I would be lying right now if I said I did not come in here with an agenda.
I'm okay with that.
Because
we were clear on it.
Although I wasn't clear on where the conversation would go, the other thing I've been telling myself as I've been processing this other life is it's all part of the tapestry. It's all part of understanding what it's like to be on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And understanding that this is what this place probably is. It's a place of experience. And it's understanding that it's the core of what I'm feeling that is what's most important right now, and understanding what to do with those feelings, as opposed to me choosing a life where I talked about the cool stuff, the eye-opening stuff. It's like, no, I chose to talk about this life with you when we could have gone anywhere, but I chose a boring ass life. Maybe not, but you know what from the outside, like, oh, Dad, why would you walk around doing this in the name of God? Like it's not flashy and saying, oh, I'm not going to talk about this again. Most people probably wouldn't even know who it was, but it's about the feeling. It's about the movement of it all being a part of something, and me understanding that I think there's a difference between believing, knowing, and faith. And that person who I was may have been doing what they did off of faith and blind faith, and understanding what that means. And also seeing where I'm lacking faith in my life in so many respects, because I see that I'm operating from a place of belief more than I am faith. And that's what the ultimate reckoning is right now, is understanding how do I get more in, alignment, in quotes, with faith. Do I need to be there? Not necessarily, but maybe I want to be there. Maybe I want to, for once in my life, experience what it means to have faith, as opposed to just, well, I believe this, I know this, because that's where I've been. As much as I like operating in that belief versus knowing, it's also incredibly limiting at the same time. So I think that's the direction I'm trying to move into, while not becoming an extremist with faith. And I don't want to use that word surrender either, of surrendering into faith, but just
such a new age word.
Right, because I'm not going to surrender. Because, look, I'm still not that person. I can't say definitively that I will never get down on my knees and be like, ah. But that's not me.
Yeah, I tell God, creator, surrender me. Like, for me to surrender is still active on my part, which means that it's an act of surrender, which means I'm still in control of it, which means it's not actually surrendered. Right? When someone surrenders, that's a choice that they make. And I just tell divinity, like, you surrender me, because that when I get swept along with your movement without me being able to say anything or do anything about, like, I am surrendered to that. And that's what I just to bring it back to the Exodus, because you had brought that up, when we act in the name of God, it's never to tell people what to do. When Moses went to Ramses, he didn't tell him what to do. He said, you have to let us go. Like, he didn't tell him, you do A, B, and C, right? He said, you have to relinquish your hold on us so that we can go free, because the only time you can be with God, or, is when you have freedom to be in that. And he was telling Ramses, like, let us go so that we can serve God, so that we can commune with God, because we can't do it when you have us under this grip of, like, you telling us what to do, right? God is such an individual movement that takes us each differently, yes, into a unified dance, into a unified purpose. But there's a difference, like, when, again, bringing it back to the ballet, right? What's more fascinating to watch when you're watching North Korea's army of thousands of people all marching synchronistically, right? Or you're watching this incredible ballet where you have a bunch of different dancers all doing different things at once, but there's this symmetry where they're all doing different movements, but they just form one big picture, right? And we can all watch North Korea's movement for a minute, 2 minutes, and then it starts looking repetitive. It's what's the bigger skill for us all to be doing the same thing, or to be us all uniquely following the movement that creates one larger picture? And so the name of God is never uniformity. That's just not how it works. And when we preach, we all must be doing the same thing without question. That's not the name of God. That's you speaking in what you think is God's name, not what I believe is creator manifesting through us.
Period.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. So, where can everyone reach you?
I have a brand new website. I'm really excited about it. It's my name, FallyKlein.com.
FALLY.
KLEIN.
KLEIN.com.
.com. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I was nervous about creating an online home for myself because, as a Gemini, I don't like to be pinned down, and I don't like to be like, this is what I do. And I think we got a really nice website up that kind of just sprinkled my magic without having to put me into a box, which is nice.
You can always change the website too.
I can. And you're actually on my website on the media tab. We have our other interview. It's right there. Yeah.
We got another one for it now too.
Now I'm really excited. We get to add this one.
So with that said, there were times during this interview that I forgot that I was hosting an interview because I'm just getting so lost in what you're saying. So Fally's going to be coming back again to do another episode. We don't know when yet. Sorry, I'm not giving you a well, yes, I'm sorry. You have a choice. You don't have to.
My soul has already agreed to this 1,000 lifetimes ago.
Okay, cool. So my question for everyone listening is, what do you want the next topic to be? Where would you like to see us go? Because where would you like to see Fally go? And me just be there for it too, because it's so much fun talking to you. So I have everyone
a great time with that.
Go ahead and reach out to me at, either on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist or my website, thepastliferegressionist.com. Usually put that all at the beginning, but again, I want to hear from you guys on this one because I think it would be so cool to get your input, what the next topic is. So yeah, just reach out and go check out Fally's website. And thank you, Fally, for being here, because these are the types of conversations that I want to have more of on the show. And I'm realizing that more and more. So thank you for an amazing episode today.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm working on the accepting the thing. Okay, anyways. See,
not every interview is as fun being on as yours. You give me a lot, not me, you give your visitors a lot of space. I know you said a minute ago that you came on with an agenda, and that's okay with me, but because you actually still create a lot of space for your visitors to talk, and you're not pushing any agenda. You came in with curiosity, I would say, more than a real agenda.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And maybe agenda was the wrong word to use. I think it was more, it's pushing something without pushing it, because I don't do a lot of episodes with the alien stuff or the ancient stuff, because there's always that fear that I have that's, the sexy thing, and that people will want to have sessions to see what alien race they were or what.
That's a whole other can of worms. Not as exciting as you'd think.
And so my agenda, I guess, in a sense, was to choose a mundane life with someone who is very knowledgeable as a practitioner in the field, and having a conversation that was going to take its own, take the wheel all on its own. But that was the agenda, was picking a life where I felt we could go for meaning instead of flash.
Yeah. And I don't believe in the mundane. I believe
mundane was the wrong word too.
Yeah. There are no ordinary, literally when you go onto my website, you'll see me say it. There are no ordinary moments.
I agree with that. Yeah. And I need to check that word mundane and switch it out. But okay, we're going to do an episode
on being mundane.
Well, I mean, we'll do an episode, a flashy episode too, because that would be interesting to do with you. But
anytime.
I think that there was so much substance here, and I think it was a very deep and thought-provoking episode just for everyone to listen to and to take stock of in their own lives and in their own journey, and ask, what does it mean to have belief or faith, and where do those feelings come from, and how do you separate your own human emotions from an experience?
Yeah, so much more to unpack there.
Yeah. So I'll have you back again. So,
thank you so much. I'm already looking forward.
Yes. I mean, I was finished with yay.
Hooray!
Fellow time travelers, your journey through time awaits you. Just want to thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. And if you're interested in discovering who, when, and where you have been throughout time, and you'd like to book a session with me, just go ahead and send me a message on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist, or you can reach me through my website, yourpastliferegressionist.com.
Hey, time traveler. Are you trying to learn your birth chart and you're struggling through all those confusing layers of signs, houses, planets, degrees, aspects? I have a 4-level self-paced course that makes this process so much clearer. Hi, I'm Danny. I'm that witch next door. I'm an instructor and mentor for folks like you that are trying to learn all of this trendy new astrological information for themselves and their own lives. Each level of my course is specifically designed to dive deep into the chart and help make sense of all those different parts and pieces. I developed this course to directly improve all the problems that I personally encountered on my journey to learning my own birth chart so that you don't have to. All of the information is presented in a way that is digestible and set up to promote the most effective retention and set you up for real success. By the end of our last level, you'll be ready to practice interpreting the transits and the aspects for yourself. You can visit thatwitchnextdoor.com/astrology for more information and to order yours today. You can also use code Time to Learn for a 10% discount off of your bundle today. This is my way of saying thank you so much for being part of the Timeless Spirituality community. I enjoy working with all of you so much that listen to me over on That Witch podcast. So don't forget, if you're struggling to learn your birth chart, you want to finally make sense of all of this, visit thatwitchnextdoor.com/astrology and use code Time to Learn for 10% off at checkout. Thank you so much, time traveler. Thank you, Daniel, the past life regressionist. And I'll see you all in class.